I'm Melina Weisskopf in for Steve Lance tonight. Just moments ago, President Trump held a joint press conference with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House. At the top of their agenda, trade, defense cooperation, and China's rising aggression in the Indo-Pacific. NTD's Sam Wong has the details.
Forging ties in the face of an increasingly assertive China, President Trump on Thursday hosted Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House. The two discussed Trump's reciprocal tariffs and plans to boost U.S. defense and energy sales to India.
They're going to be purchasing a lot of our oil and gas. We have more oil and gas than any other country in the world by far. It's very important that we remain united as countries. We're friends and we're going to stay that way.
The White House has suggested a new defense framework between the U.S. and India. As part of the deal, India will ramp up purchases of American technology, and the U.S. will prioritize India as a main importer of American natural resources. The two nations zoomed in on semiconductors, critical minerals, and other supply chain issues. These are areas that China is seeking to dominate.
Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters.
Earlier on Thursday, Modi also met with tech billionaire Elon Musk and White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Musk has long been looking to bring Starlink to India, but so far to no avail. Though Trump often criticizes India over issues like illegal immigration and its trade deficit with the U.S., the two leaders have maintained a cordial relationship in public. Now the administration says it's hoping to announce a fair trade deal for both countries.
On tariffs, are you concerned that the countries that would be most affected, like India, would just shift their trading to China?
No, I'm not concerned about anything, really. I mean, I'm just doing what's fair.
Disputes aside, the United States remains India's top trading partner. The nation has spent billions on American defense imports in recent years. Geopolitically, India is a member of the Quad Alliance, a strategic partnership with the U.S., Japan, and Australia. The coalition shares common concerns about China's malign activities in the Indo-Pacific region. Sam Wong, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Vowing to slash the country's trade deficits, President Trump unveils plans to impose reciprocal tariffs on all U.S. trading partners. The tariffs won't start immediately, though, giving time for countries to negotiate. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
Announcing a new round of sweeping reciprocal tariffs, President Trump says the U.S. should tax foreign goods the same rate that other nations are charging on U.S. goods. The goal, the administration says, is to create a level playing field, encourage domestic production, and cut the $1 trillion U.S. trade deficit.
Meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them, no more, no less. In other words, they charge us a tax or tariff, and we charge them the exact same tax or tariff. Very simple.
Reciprocal tariffs mean that the U.S. is treating other nations based on how they're treating the U.S. The administration will customize its tariff rate for each trading partner by looking at not just their tariffs on U.S. goods, but also additional levies like the value-added taxes that Trump says are even more punitive than a tariff. He's also warning countries like China not to try to circumvent tariffs by sending their products to another country. On the impact to American consumers, President Trump says,
the prices for some things, many things, it could be all things, will go down. Ultimately, will go down.
Meanwhile, officials say the earliest date that these tariffs will go into effect will be early April, and that is for the administration to study and analyze what each country is doing to the U.S. And that will give some countries more time to potentially negotiate and lower their tariffs on U.S. goods to avoid U.S. actions. And on foreign policy, President Trump says he wants Russia to rejoin G7, calling it a mistake to throw them out.
They should be sitting at the table. I think Putin would love to be back.
It comes after Trump held an over hour-long phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin before calling Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday. Trump says he trusts Putin while promises that Ukraine will be involved in peace talks with Russia.
Will Ukraine have a seat at that table for those negotiations?
Of course they would. I mean, they're part of it. We would have Ukraine, we'd have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too.
And the president asked that he wants to talk to both Russia and China about denuclearization. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And now to discuss the latest developments overseas, we're happy to have on Professor of International Affairs at George Washington University, Michael Barnett, and national security expert Ricoh Danielson. Thank you both for joining us today. Now, quickly, before we dive into some of the other headlines, I want to get your reaction to the meeting between President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trump says the U.S. will be increasing military sales to India. How significant do you all think this is, and what message does it send? Michael, we'll start with you.
Well, it's a continuation of, first an American foreign policy that's attempted to strengthen its alliance with India. It is the largest democratic power in population-wise, and it's certainly central in South Asia and East Asia. So this has been a continuation of American desire to strengthen those alliance ties. And Trump obviously wants to take it to a new level. And so, in many ways, I wouldn't say it's an aberration from where the U.S. has been for the last number of years.
And Ricoh, what is your analysis of the situation?
This puts a lot of countries such as China and also different foreign threat actors within arm's reach. So I think from a military perspective, it's a good move. Increasing the trade with India, additionally in regards to technology and military assets and also oil, is a fantastic move, I believe. And I think it'll further strengthen the United States itself in that region.
Now, for a moment, I want to ask you both about the reciprocal tariffs that Trump just enacted today across all countries across the globe. Now, this means that the U.S., of course, will match whatever tariffs other countries impose. That's on a case-by-case basis. What do you both expect the reaction from other countries to be? And the bigger question, of course, ultimately is how will this impact Americans? Michael?
Well, I think the language of reciprocal gives you the image that these are actually going to be, as Trump has said, we're going to treat them like they treat us. And in fact, what really is going on here is an attempt to actually use American economic power to, in many ways, strengthen its trade advantage in different locales. And in addition, for many, it will be seen as part of a trade war by any other name. And so if we think that reciprocal tariffs are not going to, let's say, excite markets, make relations more difficult, I think we're kidding ourselves.
Ricoh, how do you think this will impact Americans?
Yeah, so I think Trump doing reciprocal tariffs kind of levels a playing field in different countries and whatnot to see how they're willing to come to the table and actually become part of the United States and also the superpower economic superpower, if you will, and also to help develop the United States internally. What I believe is going to happen is there's going to be a short duration where prices may increase, unfortunately, and also there might be some hiccups. But I think in the long term, this will plan out and balance the checkbook and also balance the power that needs to be and help develop not only the United States economics, but also the world economics.
Yeah, and just for a moment, of course, there's some news coming up for this weekend that hostage exchange is going to be taking place. Now, terrorist group Hamas says that it will abide by that ceasefire deal and continue releasing those Israeli hostages. Do you guys think that Trump's threats towards Hamas and what's going on in that region factor into Hamas's decision?
Absolutely. What Trump's recent statement that he wants to turn Gaza into the Riviera of Israel in part is something that really needs to be seen for what it is, which is a policy that's designed for ethnic cleansing. And the consequence then, as Hamas has said, is that this basically changes the terms. We never thought that down the road, after we've exchanged these hostages, that the United States would come through and find a way to essentially forcibly evict 2 million Palestinians. So that's going to hang over anything that goes on going forward.
That being said, Ricoh, how do you think this changes the calculation for that region in the long term?
Yeah, long term, I think President Trump is going to deliver. At the end of the day, Hamas needs to be eradicated. They are a terrorist organization, and they do very bad things to good people. Unfortunately, the Palestinian people are being suffering of this, and it shouldn't happen. Unfortunately, the land grab that President Trump is doing, the United States is doing, is going to geo-displace certain amount of people. However, they will be welcomed back. I believe a lot of people are missing the key marker here is if the United States, in fact, takes Gaza as its own, which will more likely be a U.S. territory, they will have strategic military alliance, not only from Israel, more specifically in close proximity, and also in hands reach to the Middle East. I think it's a good strategic play in the long term. However, there's going to be a lot of turmoil that needs to be worked through, though.
Now, while I have both of you guys on and your expertise in foreign affairs, I want to ask you about what's going on in Russia. So we know Trump is now calling for Russia to be let back into the G7, which would be the G8, of course, if they came back. He's also saying that negotiations to end the war in Ukraine will start immediately after. He called both Putin and Zelensky yesterday. Now, let's together listen to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth talking about those negotiations today in Belgium. Listen.
We have the perfect deal maker at the table from a position of strength to deal with both Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. No one's going to get everything that they want. Understanding who committed the aggression in the first place.
Now, Michael, why do you think the U.S. is in a position of strength for these negotiations? And ultimately, what do you think is the most likely outcome for Russia and Ukraine here?
Well, the U.S. is in a position of strength because essentially what the U.S. has signaled is that it's going to cut Ukraine off, at the knees. And so, and if U.S. Begins to capitulate to Russia, Europe is also going to reduce its own defense assistance to Ukraine as well. And so that's the position of strength. The position of strength is really about being able to dictate terms, and to do so in cahoots with President Trump's good friend, Vladimir Putin, and wants to let him back in to the G7, so it becomes the G8. And the consequence then is that there's no punishment for what Yeltsin did, and the rule of law at the global level becomes irrelevant going forward.
Do you agree with that sentiment, Ricoh?
I do partially. I think that welcoming back Russia and Ukraine to the summit is a good idea because you have other countries over there that have radical ideologies and terrorist organizations that are in power. So essentially, these will be doing good. I think the long-term position here for the United States is I think we have had enough funding their own war, and actually from a strategic perspective, Ukraine has been over a barrel here, and they cannot survive any more wartime without the help of the United States against Russia. So it makes a good move, and I think that the United States is going to be land grabbing not only U.S. territory within Ukraine, and also we know for a fact that they cannot pay back any of the money, so we'll just start grabbing all their land and minerals and whatnot.
Now, next, I want to get both of your reaction to what Trump had said earlier. He said that he and President Putin have agreed to denuclearize, quote, in a bold way. Let's listen together to what he said this afternoon, talking about his plans for both Ukraine and Gaza after the wars.
When we straighten it all out, then I want to have one of the first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, and I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half.
Michael, how realistic is this?
It's a wonderful thing to think about. Sure, who wouldn't want a peace dividend, even though there is no peace? I think it's very unlikely. I don't know what denuclearization means. He hasn't really explained that to anybody. And the idea that somehow we would all find ourselves essentially in a concert of great powers, part of this Machiavellian plan, I think, is to go back and create a system of great powers that essentially come together and dictate world order. I mean, that's part of the overall vision that's going on here. And so what you're beginning to see then is how all this gets put together in a way that actually returns the world, if he's successful, to something that was quite familiar in the 19th century.
Ricoh, what is your reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree in part with Mike as well in regards to what does denuclearization really look like and what does that really mean? If it means moving away from nuclear weapons, I can kind of want to say, yes, it's a good idea, but it was the reality and likelihood of it happening? Probably not. What I always believe that there's always going to be one world power or two world powers that has the ability to have nuclear weapons. And if you look at the reality, the likelihood and probability, it'll always be the United States, China, or Russia. And I really doubt that this will happen, but it's a good initiative to take forward.
Ricoh Danielson, Michael Barnett, thank you both for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
Rock and roll.
And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is confirmed as the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. This as Trump's pick for Education Secretary testifies at a hearing interrupted by protests. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez brings us more.
Senator Mitch McConnell was the only Senate Republican who voted against the confirmation of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. On Thursday, the Senate also confirmed Brooke Rollins to be the next Secretary of Agriculture, and Linda McMahon, Trump's pick to be the next Secretary of Education, faced a fiery hearing where she was interrupted repeatedly by protesters.
And appreciate that they're here. So, thank you, Chairman Cassidy, to make sure we can deliver for our education.
Thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee will come to order.
Linda McMahon was pressed by Senate Democrats on how come she's asking senators for their support to confirm her to be the next Secretary of Education when President Trump has commented on wanting to abolish this department.
Do you agree? And let me just once again get your feelings on this, that if there is a movement to abolish the Department of Education, it has to go through the United States Congress?
Yes, it is set up by the United States Congress, and we work with Congress. It clearly cannot be shut down without it.
The Judiciary Committee also voted to advance the nomination of Kash Patel to be the next director for the FBI, and that's despite Senate Democrats delaying the vote that was initially scheduled for last week.
Follow the dots. It goes from the White House with Stephen Miller, the deputy to the president, to the acting Attorney General Beauvais, and the message is Kash Patel, KP, the initials, wants you to move faster in purging the ranks of the FBI.
And on the House side, the House's Budget Committee began the markup of a budget resolution to kickstart the reconciliation process. Conservative spending hawks have already alerted that they're against the proposal.
We're just playing games. We're going to make cuts and then give the money to the Pentagon. That's not making real cuts. They need to come to the table with some of us and make some serious offers and quit yielding to the war pimps over at the Pentagon.
Senate Republicans have warned House Republicans that they will not accept any reconciliation bill that does not make the Trump tax era cuts permanent. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.